Thank you. And what about Measure A? How does that, is that alive right now in Alameda?
Yes, it
Is
is.
it being applied?
Yes, it
Where?
is.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to share, and what is your understanding of what Measure A provides?
Well, let me tell you what Measure A does. And there's something beautiful about Measure A. It's only one sentence long. There shall be no multifamily housing built in Alameda. That's what it says. That's what the voters adopted in 1972. So, the Alameda Municipal Code was then amended by the City Council at the time to define multifamily housing, which says you shall not build anything more than 2 units in one building, because more than that is defined as multifamily, and our charter says no multifamily housing. So here's the problem. State law says every city shall provide lands, designate some lands, doesn't have to be every inch. You have to provide some land for multifamily housing. You cannot prohibit it. So here's the distinction. What state law is saying is, look, single family zoning is fine. Every city in the Bay Area has got some. Even San Francisco has some single family zoning. The issue is you can't cover your entire city in single family zoning. So, boom, we have a conflict. State law says you need at least some land zoned for multifamily housing. Measure A says not 1 inch. So, we have a problem. And when there's a problem between state law, which is up here, and city law, which is down here, state law always wins. You cannot win that fight. So, what do? First thing we do, and this is all laid out. The state laid it out for us in 2006 with a letter that was 15 pages long about everything that's wrong with our land use laws in Alameda, and it took us 6 years to fix it all. And in 2012, we finally finished, and the state said, good job, you're certified. It started with density bonus law. So the first thing we did, 2009, there was a whole bunch of other things too. The letter was 12 pages long, and it was filled with everything. Our second unit ordinance was screwed up. All this stuff was out of consistency. But the big ones on Measure A, first, density bonus law. So what state density bonus law says is, as I described, you'll give these bonuses, additional units for projects that have affordable housing. So far, no problem. No problem. No problem with that in Measure A. But what state law says is, and the whole concept of state law, think of it this way, the state's saying, look, if a developer comes to you, Mr. Planner, Andrew, and says, I'm going to give the city of Alameda some affordable housing units, then you have to say, thank you, Mr. Developer, because the state needs it. And if the developer says, and to make it viable, I need a couple things. I need some additional units to help pay for those affordable units on top of what your zoning allows. That's what bonus units are. Then you, Andrew, or your body, your planning board, or your council will say yes. And the ratios are all spelled out. So that's okay. So far, so good. No problem. One more thing about density bonus law. State says, and developer comes to you, says, I'm giving you affordable units. Then they say, I want bonus units, another 15 units. I say, okay, you can have it. But local guy, Andrew, really doesn't want the project built because it's too dense. Then I say to the developer, oh, that's a shame. You can't fit those additional 10 units. We have a height limit, or we have some other development standard. Oh, you can't fit the additional 10 units in single-family homes? That's too bad. I'm not giving you a variance. Ha, too bad. Guess you're not going to build those extra units, are you? State law goes, no, city. Developer, if that's a problem, developer says, I need a waiver. Not a variance, a waiver. You must waive that requirement if your requirement is making it, is physically prohibiting them from being able to fit the units on the property. And so that was the first place where the city, to rectify these to provide some flexibility within the confines. So the straight answer to your question is Measure A still applies to the whole city with a few exceptions. But anybody on any property that can apply for density bonus, which means your property has to be big enough to allow at least 10 units, which means most properties need to be about 10,000 square feet. So if you own a home anyway back there with 5,000 square feet, don't get any ideas, it's not going to work. But if you have a big property, you can then say, hey, well, Measure A, the 2-unit part of your zoning code, is preventing me from fitting. So they can ask for a waiver from the 2-unit, the multifamily prohibition. That's where most of those projects that are multifamily that we have approved have used that waiver. Then, for the second piece, the multifamily overlay zone, this is where it's just very direct and very upfront. State law says, you want a housing element certified, you need to comply with state law. State law says you shall define not where you might waive it if they do these things. You just have to, there has to be enough, some land in your city that where it's permitted by right. That's the law in California, so show us where that is. That's when we came up in 2012 with the multifamily overlay district zoning. It's a zoning district. We applied it to a handful of sites. Approximately, when you add up the acreage of all those sites, it's about 1% of the entire land area of Alameda. 1%. And that was enough for the state. So, you know, the Del Monte site, Encinal Terminals, like if we will need, we can go back to that slide. It shows the little slash sites. Those are the sites where in 2012, the council said, state law says we have to do this. We're going to do it to get into compliance with state law. They approved the multifamily overlay district. We don't need to go back to the voters to amend Measure A to do this. We're required to do it by state law. So even if we went back to the voters and said, hey, we want to do this, and the voters said no, it wouldn't have changed anything. We still had to do it. So that's where we have the multifamily overlays permit on those 1% of the city's property, permit multifamily housing by right. Now, you still have to go through the approval process and everything like that, but that's where Measure A and our zoning code disagree.
Thank you.
But basically, Measure A for the other 99% of the property, it still applies.